Hello, my creative friends, and welcome to another episode of The Daily Prompt. This is the show where I'm taking you on my adventure trying to build an independent film studio, starting with an absolutely no-budget, independent feature film targeted at a sci-fi audience, as we talked about a couple of days ago, and specifically made for very low to no budget to demonstrate that you or anyone can do what I'm setting out to do pretty much anywhere in the world. One of the great challenges that I have along the way is that writers have this insecurity. They have this fear that they're not actually able to do this, that actually creating material that gets seen in the world, that gets bought, that finds an audience, all that stuff, that it's just out of reach somehow, and it's just not today. And so I'm going to be showing you that as we go through this process. Now, a couple of days ago, we talked about the audience. We talked about who the target is for this first project that I'm putting together. I need to reiterate that just because I'm making an independent sci-fi project, a no-budget sci-fi project, that doesn't mean that this is only applicable to sci-fi or that this is only applicable to no budget. At the end of the day, these principles apply across the board. It's like when I set out to reverse engineer the creative process, what I realized along the way is that process is applicable to anyone, not just people who want to write what I want to write, not just people who want to write movies. The process is the same for people who want to write novels, who want to write television, who want to write short films, who want to write nonfiction. At the end of the day, the process is the same. Those 7 steps those 7 phases are the same for everyone. So when I talk about that I'm going to make an independent, no-budget sci-fi project, I don't want those of you who are not interested in making sci-fi or not interested in making no-budget stuff, I don't want you to tune out, because the principles here that we're talking about are applicable across the board. Similarly, when we talk about the budget itself and what we talked about yesterday, taking whatever the resources that we have available to us on whatever sort of level that project is going to be at, and using that knowledge and using that perspective to infuse into the creative process. That is true across the board. If you're writing a big studio tentpole Hollywood blockbuster, $200 million film, you want to make sure that you utilize all the resources available and infuse that into the creativity. So that's where some of the tentpole ideas are going to come from. That's where some of the mass market storytelling, the popcorn movies, are going to come from. That creativity that is within you right now. That even if you don't think that way now, you can think that way. You can train yourself to think that way. You can pre-align your imagination to infuse that creative project, as long as you understand the elements that are involved, as long as you understand the perspective from which you're creating your story. So what we're doing on this project is, because I want to build from the ground up, because I want to bootstrap this project, because I don't want to go out and try to find investors and do all that part of it, I want to start with nothing and show you how we can build a full independent film studio from nothing. Because I want to show you that, my thinking is that it's about finding that specific target audience. Now, I happen to be a fan of sci-fi. That doesn't mean that's all the movies that I ever want to make. That doesn't even mean that's most of the movies that I ever want to make. I want to make across lots of different genres, dramas, comedies, possibly period pieces. Ooh, that was alliterative. Any number of different genres. There are stories to be had that meet my larger objective, and that whole sense of, seeing our future as this extraordinarily opportunity place. Wow, my words aren't working today. To see it as the future is extraordinary, and our opportunities are extraordinary. And that doesn't mean that all of that storytelling has to come through science fiction. That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that because I'm trying to expand people's imagination for the future that's coming at us, that they have to be futuristic stories. That's all a little bit on the nose. And in fact, the specific story that we've been coming up with for this project is probably not a story that prepares us for the future. It's more a fun, mind-bendy sci-fi idea that plays with the way we think about things, right? So that we can engage an audience, so that we can attract that audience. One of the things I very specifically want to do with it is create a movie that when you're finished watching the movie, you want to watch it again. That's one of the big things that I believe is going to draw audiences to the project. If we tell stories that we want to tell, if we tell stories that are purely about, well, I see these characters and in this situation, and you just pour it out there, it can work, it can connect. But if it's all about you and what you're expressing, what can often happen is that you don't really think through how it's going to land with the audience. And how it's going to land with the audience is what's going to determine how successful that project is ultimately, right? If I can make a story, if we can create a film that's going to be repeat viewable, well, then it's more likely to attract not just an audience, but actually a fan base. Actually, people who get excited about the movie, excited about the ideas in the movie. They want to pick it apart. They want to discuss it. They want to think about all the little nuances and make sure that, did everything actually add up? Or is this, no, I think there's some holes in the story. No, but actually that hole could be explained by this thing over here. I think the sci-fi audience is the kind of audience that is interested in that kind of thing. And the reason I think that, in part, is because I'm interested in that kind of thing. So if you have no interest in sci-fi, I would say don't go down that road. Figure out what your passion is. Create the story around what your passion is in a way that's going to connect with the audience. So it's not about what you're putting out there. It's about what they're experiencing. If that one idea could be clear to writers, I think the quality of storytelling would lift automatically, right away. The vast majority of the screenplays that I've read over the years, 7,000 odd of them, the vast majority of them are not really worried about my journey through the story. They're worried about the writer telling me what the story is. And I think that is fundamentally something that we can change. Now, in the fast screenplay system that I developed about a year ago, I think it's a year ago, it might have been 2 years ago, no, I think it's a year ago, I added a new layer to the process. The very first phase is the setup phase, which is the pre-alignment. This is a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now this week. If we just begin developing our story at the moment we have that idea, and we don't actually pre-align for the target that we have in mind, if we don't pre-align for it, then we're just basically playing around in our imagination and coming up with whatever that story might be. If instead we pre-align our imagination, so I've identified the target, I've talked a little bit about the budget and the sort of limitations, get my mind into the mindset of hitting that target. If I can get my mind into that mindset of hitting that target, then when I start to actually develop the story, when I start to actually create the details of the story. What's the character? What's happening to the character? What's the journey they're on? What are they facing? Those decisions that I make are already in sync with that target because I've taken the time to identify it, to define the target. I've taken the time to consider the production realities of whatever level the project is that I'm on. So at that point, I can go and begin to start actually developing the story. So in the system that I built, the first phase, the setup phase, is all about pre-aligning your imagination. It's about understanding the nature of story. It's about setting a foundation for yourself as a writer to make sure that you keep coming back consistently day after day. It's about understanding the business needs and what's involved in the business and thinking through things like the marketing perspective. Now, a lot of people they misunderstand because they think, well, he's just telling me to write for the market, but that's not it at all. It's not about writing for the market. It's about understanding your target. It's about defining that objective so that the creative imagination and the ideas and the story that you come up with can already be in sync with that ultimate target. That's how you're going to create something that is more likely to land with its intended audience. Now, one of the challenges that I had along the way is that because we're really building that sort of foundation at the beginning, writers just wanted to jump into their story. They wanted to get to the focus phase, the story development stuff. They didn't want to have to wade through this stuff, which in a lot of cases, intermediate level writers already have a daily routine. They already know the importance of actually following through. They already understand the basics of story and how the industry works. And so it felt a little simple. It felt a little basic. So I added a new layer to the thing, which basically is how to write a movie in how to turn your idea into a screenplay in 1 month. So each step of that initial phase, I would basically give a new exercise each day. And then as you go through each of them, you basically capture your ideas, figure out what it's telling you, design some story in it, and then get a draft onto the page. So what I'm going to do with my project over the next week or 2 weeks, basically, is I'm going to use that process. So I'm going to basically capture the ideas that I currently have. I've been going back and forth with one of the writers in the writer's room to sort of flesh out the story a little bit. Super excited, had a good email discussion today, figured out a couple of cool things. So now it's time to really take that process. Now, how to write this thing is what I call the fast draft. The fast draft is where it's not about creating a script that you're going to show to anybody. I have this theory, I have this basic premise, which is that if you have ideas in your head that you don't get out of your head, you don't put them on paper and move forward, those ideas are going to clog your imagination. They're going to stick in your brain, and you're not going to be able to get past them because you're going to keep cycling over them. It's like you have a good idea for a movie and you just keep thinking about the same idea over and over and over, month after month after year, and you don't get any writing done because you're so busy daydreaming about this movie that's never going to happen because it's the idea in your head. So the idea of the fast draft, and by the way, fast, all capital letters, is the system: focus, apply, strengthen, tweak. But fast is lowercase letters. It means fast, means quick. So the idea is that we take that idea, we get it out on the page, we just purge it from the brain, and in so doing, figure out what it's trying to tell us. Turn that into a draft as quickly as possible. In the system, it's basically throughout the setup phase. So the first sort of 3 weeks to a month to actually just go through that. So for those of you on the fence about Fast Screenplay, literally, if you just did 1 month, if you only subscribe for 1 month, then this tool is yours. Now, the key with this tool is that once you understand how to do that in 1 month, you can condense that. So what I'm going to be doing is taking that tool, the fast draft tool, and capturing the idea and getting it on the page and really figuring out what subliminal stuff is in there, trying to get out, and turn that into a fast draft probably within about a week to a week and a half, depending on time, basically, depending on the vlog and the social media stuff and all the other things vying for the attention. But the idea is that way I'm going to capture what we've done, what we've talked about so far. I'm going to take this pre-aligned imagination. I'm going to take this idea of defining the target, that sci-fi audience. Now that that's in there, that's churning around my brain. We're trying to, every little idea that my brain spits up to me is shaped, is steered by that, knowing what that target is, by knowing what the production realities of trying to make this on a no budget. Obviously, we're going to have as few actors as possible. My goal is to make this, I don't think I'm probably going to make it with just one actor, but ideally, it'd be great if it was just one actor. But maybe not, because if that actor then gets sick halfway through or something becomes unavailable for whatever reason halfway through, there needs to be some way built into the story design that I could switch to another actor, or I could add a whole new subplot, or right. So this is the reality of making something on a no budget anyway, or a very low budget, is production realities change all the time. You don't have the money to pay for, even on a big budget, things change. Your actor could break a leg. I mean, at the end of the day, things can go wrong. But on a low budget, no budget, it's particularly problematic because you're not necessarily paying people. You don't necessarily have the resources to pay people professional scale rates and all that kind of stuff. So you tend to take what you can get, and you have to be a little bit more flexible with the production. So knowing those things thinking about those things, putting those things in the brain, pre-aligning my imagination. Then the next step is to go through and do that sort of brain dump and sort of see what sparked, get it out on the page, put it in front of us, figure out what it's telling me, shape that into the story as per how the fast draft works. And then ultimately have something that we can then start to really take and shape and refine. So if you look back on the episodes that we talked about, those 7 phases, we did them in reverse order to reverse engineer how it works and why they are the 7 phases. Because if you go in reverse order, you can see what the goal is and why. Oh, okay, now we need to do this step before that. Oh, well, we need to do this before that. And we need to do this before that. So that's why I've earlier in this series, reverse engineered that process, reverse engineered that for you. But ultimately, as we're going to go through it, we're going to go through it systematically, right? So we're going to go through setup, focus, apply, strength, and tweak. So my point is, and how to take this and sort of personalize it for you. Obviously, first of all, if you haven't done the Fast Screenplay 10-day free start, do it. It's free. And the first 10 days, you get the first 10 steps of the fast draft as well. Like, you can literally get halfway to your fast draft. Maybe you'll figure out the rest of it. Maybe you don't need to join us for the rest of it because you can just use your own way of doing the rest of it. But why not take that stuff that's there? I don't understand you guys not taking the stuff that's there. It's free. Anyway, so but I'm going to take this idea through that process, and then I'm going to sort of share with you the progress as we go along. I don't really want to give away the story. I don't necessarily want to give away too much. I'm kind of on the fence, to be perfectly honest with you at the moment, as to how much to share with you as we go through the daily prompt, because I don't want the daily prompt to sort of kill the effectiveness and the cool factor of the movie by giving away all its secrets too early. One of the reasons, as we talked about in an earlier episode, that we don't like spoilers is because spoilers reveal information that should be revealed in the story. And if we reveal that information in a spoiler, in a trailer, or somebody in a review reveals something for you, then it changes the way you experience that piece of work. And the ideas that we have and the sort of conceptual stuff around this sci-fi project, I think are really exciting. Some really cool, heady sort of stuff. So I don't know. Drop in the comments what you think of as far what you'd like to see, how much detail you'd like. I know that we've already had a couple people say, "What's the story? What's the premise? What's the situation?" Okay, I get that that's what you're interested in, but how much do you really want to know? Because do you want to be taken on the ride, or do you want to be taken on the development ride? There's 2 different potential values that this could be for you. I ultimately think if the goal is to build an independent film studio, which it is, then the greater chance we have of these initial films making sufficient return on their investment, making revenue, selling tickets, selling downloads, whatever it might be, depending on how the end product is. The more we can sell, the more revenue comes in, the writer gets paid, I get paid, we pour the rest of it into the new projects, and we can build faster. Remember, as I talked about yesterday, the big thing here is we can build this thing from the ground up with nothing at all. The more revenue we can bring in, whether it's through people joining us in Fast, whether it's through people buying tickets to our early films and buying downloads, whether it's making a sale to Netflix, whatever it might be, the more revenue can come in, the faster we build this thing, the better for the greater number of writers. Ultimately, it's about helping writers make a living making movies, because ultimately that's win-win. That's going to help me too. So as you ponder how much you want to know about the story as I develop it, as going through that process, really think about the big picture. Maybe rather than just tell me how much you want to know, tell me why you want to know how much you want to know. I think that's going to probably get us to where we're trying to be. So let's turn this into a daily prompt for you. I'm aware of the time, and I think I want to try to shorten these episodes quite a bit, so so that we can get you into taking more action and not chew up quite as much of your day each day. To turn this into a daily prompt for you, here's the thing to understand. 2 episodes ago, we talked about defining your target. We talked about what is your objective, what's your goal. When you take that, when you put that into your imagination, when you sort of pre-align your imagination with that, the ideas that you're going to come up with along the way are going to push you more toward intuitively creating the stories that are going to achieve that objective. For example, let me try to give you a quick little example. Let's say you wanted to write a rom-com, right? Romantic comedy. You want to write a $2-3 million romantic comedy, something like that. If you don't think about love, if you don't think about romantic comedies that already exist, if you don't think about, if all you do is think about whatever that one idea that you had was, then you're going to come up with a story that, okay, is going to be the story that you told. But if you start to really think through, okay, where is my romantic comedy likely to be seen? What kind of audience am I likely to attract? What kind of audience do I want to attract? Maybe I want to attract, first-time mothers in their 30s or something, right? Who are now single for whatever reason, right? Let's say you want to really attract that audience. Then by simply thinking about that, by simply looking at who those people are, by simply pondering what they would want to get out of your story, it's going to, ideas spark ideas. So it's going to infuse your imagination with ideas to hit that target. Doesn't mean you're writing for that target. It means that you're trying to get your imagination to be in sync with your target. So this is what you want to do. Whatever you're working on, whatever audience you think you might want to target, whatever resources, based on yesterday's episode we're talking about, that you might want to include in, or that you might have available to you or try to have available to you, take all that stuff and put it in your imagination, and then begin the process of pulling your ideas and getting them in front of you and figuring out what your story is going to be. Just capture it first. Pre-align your imagination, start capturing those ideas to see what's there so that you can spill that out of you. Once you have something in front of you, that's when you can really begin the work of actually developing your story and taking it further, refining it and making it something that is strong and powerful and extraordinary and going to hit your target the way that you want it to. So that's today's daily prompt. If you haven't already pre-aligned your imagination, do so. And then if you have, and hopefully you have, go ahead and try to capture what's already in your imagination. If you want to do that 10-day free start thing, you can do those first 10 steps of the FastDraft for free. So join, do that, start capturing that imagination. Get those ideas out of your head, get them onto the page. The way you do that, as we know by now, is to take action. So whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's an hour, whether it's 10 hours, take some physical action today. Don't just think about this stuff. Don't watch the next video. Stop. You can click the subscribe button. You can click the little bell to make sure you get notified of future stuff. You can go over to Instagram and follow us and like all our stuff and share and repost and all that. You can go to Facebook and you can go to Twitter, all that kind of good stuff. But the most important thing is to take action today. Now, I've got something very unusual for you tomorrow. But for today, take some action, and then we'll see you then.